Welcome back to Fandom from Afar. I have my buddy Mason with me today. He is one of the biggest sports fans I know, and we're going to talk to him about his fandom of the New York Giants. So, Mason, thank you for coming in and being the first guest ever.
I appreciate you having me, man.
The New York Giants have won 4 Super Bowls?
I think so now. 4.
Because I feel like they won
2 within the last
two when they beat Tom Brady, and then 2 when I was younger with like Phil Simms or whoever those guys. So 4-time Super Bowl champions, not bad.
Yeah, pretty good.
So I guess I've kind of told you a little bit before we start recording, but tell me about how you became a Giants fan. Let's start from the very beginning.
So actually, it's a pretty funny story. Madden 10 on the Wii, the video game, was the main reason I chose the Giants. Basically, if you play your brothers, we played a lot. They pick a team, and you're trying to pick a team that matches, close to them, so it's a pretty fair match. And I just started playing with the Giants. I loved Eli Manning, Mari Manningham, some of these starting guys, and that's kind of what actually started to get me to like the Giants.
That's hilarious. I didn't know that. Yeah. So Eli was a big star. Do you remember who was on the cover that year?
I think it was Fitzgerald and Palomalu.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. Yeah. That's cool. I had no idea.
Yeah.
I wonder if that'll be the only time I hear that the Wii started your fandom.
When you have brothers, I said, it's the same with. That's how I became like a partial Knicks fan too. It's NBA 2K13. With my brothers played as the Thunder and I played as the Knicks, and they were like super closely rated, so we played over and over and over.
I love that.
I knew everybody on the Knicks and became a fan from that. So
I love that. That's awesome. Do you remember who your brothers played with when you were first starting out? That
I think they played with the Bengals, and I don't think they were great, but I don't think the Giants were really great either.
So again, it was kind of a fair matchup, and then you just fell in love with them.
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
Yeah.
So Eli, obviously the big star. Did you have kind of a favorite player from the game or watching the real games during that kind of era of the Giants?
I liked Ahmad Bradshaw. He was just a fun guy to play with, and Brandon Jacobs was like the two-headed monster.
He was the big running back, right?
Yeah,
he was a beast.
Yeah, he was good.
That's awesome. I love that. That's a good origin story.
Yeah.
Was that before they won their first Super Bowl?
I think it was the year they won the 2009 one.
Oh, so of course that's going to hook you in.
Yeah, and they went like 9-7 or something, so it's not like they're like top dogs.
Yeah.
But, it's like the underdog story. They're the cool team, and
that was when they beat
Patriots,
undefeated Patriots. Yeah. Wow. So wait, so was that the year with like the helmet catch?
I think that was 2011.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so Brandon Jacobs and then Barber, was he still around?
I don't know at that point. I actually don't know. I think it was just Ahmad Bradshaw and Jacobs.
Okay.
For the most part.
I gotcha. Now, what about your brothers and your dad are sports fans? Did they follow along with the Giants with you, or you're kind of a lone wolf?
Well, basically, like we all kind of picked a team and kind of went with it. And my older brother Caleb, he picked the Bengals because they had AJ Green, who were big Georgia fans, and so he got picked early. And that's like when we kind of got into watching the NFL. And so he's like, might as well follow my favorite player. And so obviously AJ Green was like the Bengals team for a good 5-6 years. So that was his team for a long time. We kind of just picked a team like that. And I live in, Florida. It's like Giants. How do you get that connection? It's like Madden on the Wii. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say they haven't been good obviously since in a while. They're kind of getting good now again, but up and down ride. But I've enjoyed keeping up with them. And
well, and you better believe that I'm having you back on for you talking about your Georgia fandom too, because I know you're obsessed. What about keeping track of the Giants from Florida, like you said? What's your favorite way to kind of keep up to date with daily details, or just follow along with players? Like, what do you do to kind of make sure you're in the know?
When I first was growing up, obviously like there's like not much Giants coverage if you're like a kid, like nowhere to find it. So I would go watch ESPN or like Sports Center every morning, and I'm just looking at the bottom for anything news related. So I feel like I knew something from reading the ESPN top 10. I'm like looking for Giants plays, and then kind of, early teenage years, I got Instagram, and there's a lot of like kids that were probably 16, 17 that ran fan pages that live in New York and are kind of with the team. So that was like my easiest way to see stuff that I wouldn't see in Jacksonville and stuff like that. And now it's kind of moved to Twitter or X, whatever it's updated to. But That's Twitter's been like a good because you get all these,
follow all the insiders and everything. Sure. Do you feel like you're a better, more informed fan, or was it kind of fun having the guys up on a pedestal when you only saw the stuff on Sports Center? Or do you like knowing like all the dirty details of every single thing that goes on in practice or their off the field lives and everything like that?
Yeah, I like the star players obviously, but I do like knowing more about like the small time guys. The Giants haven't been good for so long, so it's like I'm looking for the next guy that's maybe going to make the team good because obviously, you need that to get better. So I've always just been interested in who they're getting to build the team with instead of the top dogs then.
And it's kind of fun knowing those kind of like back of the roster guys and
yeah, no, for sure.
knowing who they are and being a fan of them before they blow up a little bit.
Yeah.
Going back to kind of the beginning with the Wii, obviously that was the Super Bowl year, so I'm not going to let you say the Super Bowl, but can you think of any specific game that kind of hooked you in as a fan and you're just like, oh, this is my team now?
I remember, I think it was 2012 maybe. That was like the first time I had really like watched, a full game through, and it was a playoff game against the Falcons. I think they won like 24-12, and it was just like a defensive battle. Like, and I didn't know half the guys' names, so I'm just sitting there like, go team on a Sunday afternoon. But it was just a good game, and that was kind of the first game that I was like, this is fun, man. Like picking a team and actually watching all the games. And of course, they don't play Giants games in Jacksonville, so that was one of the first games I'd really seen the full way through, and that kind of got me hooked.
Nice. Now, what about when you're just starting out as a fan? Did you buy jerseys or memorabilia or anything like that? And is it a regrettable decision looking back on it? Because I know there's been jerseys where I thought somebody was the coolest player, and then all of a sudden they get traded or they get in trouble, and it's like, oh, I wasted my money.
I think the only two things I had for like maybe the first 5 years, I had a snapback hat that I got for Christmas that I like never wore. It looked so ugly. Like it was full red, but it had like a blue logo, and I just would never wear it. And then I got like this like custom Odell Beckham sweatshirt when I was probably like 12.
Oh, nice.
That's when he was like,
yeah, he was the man. Yeah, exactly.
Everybody loved him. So I wore that a lot, but the hat I never wore. But that was like the first thing I got. So.
Have you ever gone up to New York to see a game at the home stadium?
Not yet. I've seen him twice in Jacksonville, but I've never been up there in Jersey.
Like, I guess, was it during the Eli era, or has it been more recent?
I saw a preseason game against the Giants. That was the first time I ever saw them, and so it was Eli against the Jags in a preseason game, and then I saw them again last year. They came and played the Jags here last year, so I saw the Daniel Jones era. It was a good game. It came down to the last play, so it was a fun one.
There you go. Let's say you get to go to your dream game. Who would the Giants be playing, and where would it be?
I would probably say the Eagles, and it would have to be a night game. I feel like the Cowboys, they always lose. They've lost like 8 or 9 of the last 10 to the Cowboys, so I feel like that's not a fun one to look forward to.
Yeah.
But they kind of go back and forth, the Eagles. The Eagles are good too right now, but.
Let's say somehow the Giants make it to the Super Bowl. Do you even think about purchasing a ticket, or is there a price limit to your craziness right now?
My price limit is probably a lot lower than a lot of people would pay, but yeah, I probably would not end up going.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a whole trip, man.
I always think about that too, because it's been quite a few years now, but when the Broncos made the Super Bowl, but they played the Seahawks and got destroyed from like play one,
paying like thousands of dollars for a hotel, travel, and
I would just be like, oh my goodness, what did I do? And but obviously it works the opposite as well if you get to go to a classic game and your team wins. But I'm always so scared of the worst case scenario.
Yeah.
Do you still play video games, and do you still play with the Giants?
I do. Yeah. I still play with my younger brother, and we play Giants Jag. He's a Jags fan, so Giants Jags, and they've been pretty similar the past 5 years. So we play that matchup a lot. It's fun.
So I've never played with video game Saquon. Is he like amazing?
He's above average. It's hard like in that game to be like insane with running backs, but they kind of change it year to year. Saquon is definitely like really good. I mean, he's kind of the only thing you have on offense.
Yeah. We'll get into predictions later, but I really do think Daniel Jones is going to have a good year.
I hope so.
Like I think he's kind of underrated. Yeah, he's no pressure. Let's talk about just kind of some of your favorites. Like, do you have maybe a favorite game that you watch? Maybe it's not the most meaningful, but like one that you just remember thinking, man, that was a great game, and I'm assuming the Giants will win in this scenario.
It was I think 2017, 2018, and they were basically like on the verge of the playoffs, and they were a game away. And the Redskins, don't cancel me, but the Redskins, they it came down to the final game, them playing each other, and it was like Kirk Cousins Redskins versus, I think it was late Eli Manning, like very end of Eli Manning, and the offense like stunk it up, and the defense like carried, and they won like a super close game. It was like a Sunday night game last week of the year to get in the playoffs, and I think they got knocked out in the first round, but just that one game was, I watched it from like a hotel. I don't even know where I was, but like I stayed up, everyone else is asleep, and I'm just sitting there watching like the Giants
on the edge of your seat. Yeah,
like no one else cares except me. But
that's awesome. That's how it should be.
Yeah.
What about? Is there a player maybe that you just irrationally love that was not a superstar, but for some reason he was your guy?
I like Dominic Rodgers-Cromartie. I know he played on multiple teams, but I feel like every time I watched, like he had a big play. Like maybe it's just me watching the 1 or 2 games a year, but you have a big play, and I'm like, wow, that guy's awesome.
Yeah.
So
nice.
Yeah.
Is there a player that played for the Giants, was not that great, and then went to another team and was amazing? Any like, oh man, he should have done that for us guys?
I'm trying to think. I feel like it's more people are good, go to the Giants, and then stink. I feel like it's the opposite. It's like, you're like, we got this guy. He's awesome.
You get him 1 year too late.
I remember Olivier Vernon was like awesome with the Dolphins.
Oh yeah.
And that was like the first time that they signed a big free agent, like a lot of money, and he stunk it up. And it's like, I was like, well, I don't want anyone to sign here anymore for that much money if it's going to be like that. So I'm trying to think of like superstars, but I don't know. I remember the duds more than the.
Yeah, I think we all do. What about kind of combining your fandoms? I've lost track how many Georgia guys are on your team right now. Like who are your Georgia boys?
It's Andrew Thomas, who's like stud left tackle at this point. Trying to think what's our middle. Tay Crowder has been a linebacker. He's there. Azeez Ojulari. No, I think that's it for the Giants.
You got some catching up to do if you want to catch the Eagles.
Yeah, dude.
Like,
they took like
I feel like half their team is Georgia.
I don't mind the Eagles even though I'm a Giants fan, just because they have like half of Georgia's roster.
Yeah, so just except for two times a year where they're gonna be facing the Giants. All right, well let's do this. Let's play some games to kind of get to know your fandom a little bit. So these are pretty random, but
okay.
Hopefully they'll get you thinking.
We'll see how I do.
So we'll start with an easy one. That this is probably common on every single sports podcast ever. But what is your Mount Rushmore? And I'll let you do any style. So it can be if you want to do the best players ever, if you want to do your favorite players, if you just want to do the top 4 defensive guys, like however you want to do it. But you just gotta let us know what your thought process is.
I would say the most 4 like recognizable for me are just like the 4 that I think like define the Giants. So I would say LT, obviously.
Gotta do him.
I went back like 2 years ago and just watched his highlights because I had never really dove into him. Like that guy would even if he played today would just kill everybody. Like he was so good.
He's one of the few guys I think that no matter what the era is, he would have been dominant.
And then I would say Michael Strahan. I think just because he has such a personality, and he's kind of like when I think of 2010 Giants, I think of him. I would say Eli Manning. Just recently, and then I would say Odell. I feel like he kind of like
interesting.
The social media game kind of changed the Giants with him. There was like a 5-year stretch where he like made the Giants popular, even though they were kind of trash. Like just his play style. So.
Oh, he was huge. Like when his one-handed catches started catching on.
I have a funny story about that too. Like when that happened.
Oh yeah.
Basically, that game was Sunday night against the Cowboys, and I think my bedtime was like 10 o'clock. It's a school night. I'm going to bed. I'm like in the bathroom brushing my teeth, and I hear Caleb, my older brother, like jump up and down, scream like the play before I leave, like the very next play they throw that touchdown catch. So I missed it. So I'm like brushing my teeth, and he comes and grabs me, and he's like, "You have to come see this." And I was like, how did I miss this
one play?
But also it's just upsetting. I'm like, I have to go to bed in the middle of a Sunday football game.
But the fact that you missed like an iconic catch.
It's like a top 10 NFL play of all time. Like,
oh yeah,
maybe at least the last 20 years.
Like, how many kids in the last decade are like sitting out there on the field trying to do one-handed catches now because of that catch? That's awesome.
That's probably my top 4, or like like I said, like most recognizable Giants for me.
I can't argue with any of those guys. Yeah. Like, is there anyone that was close to making the cut? Like, I guess Odell would be the only one that I would say is like,
a little bit questionable.
But like you said,
For me,
to define the Giants, he really did define like a whole era. So, but if it was best players, I'm trying to think who else could be up there. But like that's a pretty strong.
Yeah.
Four.
Some people might put Phil Simms because he has rings, but
yeah, I don't know if it was necessarily because of him. Didn't they have like an amazing defense back then? So no, that's a good 4. I like it. Now, next game is called Sub a Player. You can take a player from the past and put him on your current team, or you can take a current player and put him on a past team to kind of take the team up another level. So what would be your strategy for that? Just one player?
Giants player to future Giants. I think it has to be LT. I feel like it's like interchangeable.
It's kind of easy.
I feel like you could play like any position inside the like front 7, so you kind of just feel a need.
Because I think he was athletic enough, he would still play outside linebacker and just dominate.
Yeah, and they have a good defense right now, but like, it doesn't hurt to have
the best player ever.
Yeah, so that's a pretty good upgrade.
Yeah, so that's pretty easy. Good answer. All right, I asked you before you came over one of your favorite TV shows, and you said Psych. So for those who did not watch it, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I had not watched it either, so I had to look it up. It's about a kid who his dad taught him to be super observant, and he like kind of caught on, and then when he was a grown up, somehow solved a case for the police, and then they hired him to be a detective. Is that pretty much it? And then like he has his buddy along with him.
Basically, he's like playing off that he's a psychic, but he's actually just like super observant.
Gotcha.
They think he's like, has the psychic ability. He's just super observant, notices things that they don't notice.
Okay.
So it was like a comedy / detective show. I enjoyed it.
I've heard multiple people say they like it, and it's kind of fell through the cracks where I never saw it. But so for our game today, I am able to give you the super observant powers, and you are now the main character. You have to pick a Giants player to be your buddy that's your sidekick to help you solve, maybe it's a missing Super Bowl ring. I don't know. The crime has happened, and you need to pick a player to help you solve a crime. I would like to know who and why.
I feel like I got to take Andrew Thomas. It's like a bodyguard.
Yeah.
He's like the immovable force, you know what I'm saying? But,
no one's going to mess with you.
Yeah, he's also just a good dude, so.
How, like, I can picture him being like a big dude, but how big is he?
He's like 6'5", 6'6", probably 320, 330. I mean, he's like huge. But.
So yeah, maybe not like a mountain of a football player, but for normal people, no one's gonna be pushing him aside.
He's got one of the flat chests too, where it's just like for those O linemen, that's scary. If they're like 330 and have a flat chest, like oh my gosh,
it's just all
it's all muscle.
Exactly. That's cool. Okay, so you and Andrew will solve a case and maybe become best friends.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, I like it. And then last game, which I was thinking about it, I think you might have the most wide open pool of players to choose from in this game that will ever happen on this podcast, because your first name and last name can be both a first name and a last name. Mm-hmm. So this game is called Name Game. I want to hear your favorite players that either have Mason or Brandon in their names, and they don't have to be Giants players. Mm-hmm. They can be from any sport, anything like that. So are there any that leap to mind? Your favorite Mason, your favorite Brandon?
There's one.
All right, let's hear it.
So there's a Georgia player named Brandon Boykin, and he was like a corner / kick returner. And that was kind of when I first started watching football. He was like our premier corner. And I mean, he returned kicks for touchdowns and then got interceptions in the same game. So he was like, to me, like insanely cool.
One of those uber athletes that's good
and
at
I think he played in the NFL for probably 6 or 7 years, and like he didn't really pan out to be super great, but that was one of my like favorite dudes. I just remember growing up watching him. Obviously, Brandon Jacobs too is another easy one.
There has to be a famous Brandon from the last 10 years.
I'm sure there is. There's Brandon Marshall.
Oh yeah, there you go.
He played for the Giants for like 2 years.
He was awesome with the Broncos, but that all fell apart. All right, so I want to hear about your game day routine, which I know is a little bit unusual for you because you work at the Jags games. But let's say you did not work at the Jags game and there's a giant, no pun intended, Giants game. Yeah. what would be kind of like your game day routine? Where do you watch it? Who do you watch it with? What do you like to eat? Like all that good stuff. What's your ideal game scenario?
I feel like I always go to even now I go to my parents' house. I feel like I go there every Saturday, watch Georgia games and Jags games. If I'm not working, I'll go there. I feel like we always eat Mexican food. We always have like a big bowl of queso, and my little brother makes guacamole, and we have tacos, and so that's always fun. But yeah, I think it's always Mexican food, and sometimes wings. That's like, but I feel like chips and queso in football is like my go-to.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with that.
That's like my game day experience. I definitely prefer like an afternoon game than a 1:00 game.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Cause I love Sunday Ticket and just watching the red zone. So like,
I like keeping up with 8 teams at once and then like getting to focus on my one team.
Exactly. Yeah. What about at your parents' house? Do you have a specific seat? Like, are you superstitious at all?
I'm standing.
Really?
Yeah. Like every Georgia, I mean, I'm not.
Cause you're nervous?
I feel like it's both.
Yeah.
Like if I'm nervous, I kind of pace the house. My dad just sits there like, oh, we're done. I'm just like, I walk the house. Everyone does something different, but.
I can't imagine how you were during the Georgia playoff game where it came down to that last field.
And we had a lot of people over too. My dad hates that. Like my mom will invite people over to come watch with us. Yeah. My dad's like, "Why do you do this?"
He just wants to focus on the game.
Yeah. Same with like it's like a tradition. Like Georgia, Florida, when that game is played, no one comes to our house because it's either like you're upset the entire time or it's like awesome. But we don't ever, we don't want anyone to see us upset. So it's like no one comes for that game.
That's all. I totally relate. Like I definitely don't mind watching big games by myself because then the craziness takes over.
We also had like a big party that kind of happened day of for the national championship game for Georgia. Like 10 people came over. I think my dad's just like, I hope this game goes good or else I'm going to lose my mind.
Well, that was the one that you won by like 40, right? Yeah. So
by the end of the first quarter, my dad was like settled in. Like, yeah, this is fun now.
He's like, hey, who wants to talk now? I'm not paying attention.
So that's fun. It's tough in my house. We're super. My mom's even screaming. So.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. So we kind of talked about it. Do you watch Red Zone or Sunday Ticket or any of that stuff, or do you guys just kind of watch the games that are on locally?
A lot of times, since I've been by myself, whatever the past 2 or 3 years, I watch like 1:00. I'll watch Red Zone because I like obviously fantasy and stuff. It's exciting when someone gets like a 20-yard catch, like 3 point. Exactly. For me, that's like it's like awesome. So I enjoy Red Zone. It's kind of jumps from what's important.
Yep. I think it's just one of the best inventions for a sport. That's the best part because when we're having to watch like the later games, it just drives me crazy. They come back for one play and then go to commercial. Like it drives me crazy. So there's Red Zone. You'd kind of mentioned all the social media stuff before. I like to maybe use these interviews to provide value for other sports fans. Like, are there any other resources that you think are just awesome for people to follow their teams on or just find out more information in general about a sport?
There's a lot of good like homemade like YouTube like channels and stuff. People put a lot of time in. I think that some of those are like super good, especially like kind of dumbing it down for people. Like if you're just getting into it, they kind of explain like, I mean, you can search up anything and it's like, this is how it's done. This is whatever. But I think it's also, you can kind of pick your personalities who like who do, you know what I'm saying? Same with like sports TV. You're picking shows. YouTube is the same way now.
That's kind of like why I like podcasts because you can have like the super hardcore guys that are breaking down film and talking about the left guard turning his foot this way and everything, or you can just have the guys that are just having fun talking about it, or a mix of both. Like it really is awesome. I did a podcast talking about kind of like my Nuggets fandom from when I was a little kid to now, and it was kind of weird thinking about back when I was younger, I literally just check the newspaper or like watch the sports highlights on the local news. Like
every morning I'd get up an hour before I had to get up to go to school and just sit there for like 1 hour and watch the full show from 6 to 7, just sit there like glued to the TV.
Like, please mention my team.
Yeah. And like I felt like I knew everything. Like I go to school and people like have no clue. I'm like, I know everything. Sports Center.
I would just have Sports Center on the background like while I was doing anything.
There's good like 10-minute YouTube videos where it's like packed of just like information and good stuff, and there's one that are an hour long. It's kind of drawn out, and it's like a show. It's like you can do other stuff and listen to it. And
can you think of any off the top of your head that you like for the Giants, in case there's other Giants fans listening?
I don't know if there's any specific that I watch specifically just for the Giants. I kind of watch just generic.
They're more like all around NFL. Yeah. Okay, cool. Now, speaking of that, do you want to promote your Instagram stuff that you kind of create and stuff. I think it's cool.
I'm trying to get back into my own podcast eventually. Like I said, I've got to dumb down the episodes, but yeah, I enjoy doing it myself, and I would want to cover up, I feel like, everything, like the entire NFL.
So say the name of your podcast in case people want to check.
It's the Brandon Blitz Podcast. Yep.
And then what's the Instagram handle?
It's just the Brandon Blitz.
Perfect. Easy to remember. Mm-hmm. All right. Last thing. What is your prediction for the Giants this year, 2023?
I think 8-9. And
8-9.
I want to be hopeful, but also like they won, I think 6 or 7 games by 1 score last year.
So it's got to balance out a little bit.
I feel like not saying it was luck, but I feel like last year was kind of one of the more fluky game. They had a couple games that went their way and it turned them into a playoff team. I think just that division's still like really tough.
Oh yeah, the Eagles
are going to be the favorite.
Yeah.
The Cowboys are obviously, the playoffs is a different story, but getting there, like the Cowboys make it every year right now. So,
well, I like that. You're realistic. You're not like 14-2. Here we go.
Yeah, and they also just have a tough. I think they have a tougher schedule this year than they did last year. So, but we'll see.
Now, I know it's been a while since we talked about it, but you like the new coach, right?
I do.
Brian Daboll. Mm-hmm. And you like Daniel Jones.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't seem like you guys have any wide receivers.
They're all like mid-tier guys.
Yeah, they're like all number 3 guys. Running back, you're good.
Got Darren Waller.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that.
Yeah. They definitely upgraded on offense. But like I said, it's tough when you win games 20-17 every game. It's like, you don't feel great going into the next week, but a win's a win. So
maybe our dream scenario will come though, like an LT will all of a sudden be on your team and he'll be dominating again for you. And
we could go 11-6.
There you go. Well, okay. So you said 8-9 or 9-8?
I said 8-9.
8-9. Okay.
I don't think they make the playoffs.
Hopefully you'll be pleasantly surprised.
I'm hoping.
So obviously you're not picking the Giants to win the Super Bowl. Who, if you had to guess right now, who would be your Super Bowl matchup for this year?
I am like firm. I think Eagles again, and I think the Ravens. That's my hopeful prediction.
Oh, interesting. Lamar kind of comeback year.
Mm-hmm.
They made some nice upgrades.
I just think they've been like hurt at the wrong time. At the wrong times. Like right when it's mattered, everybody goes down. They have a good team, so.
It almost has to be either Eagles or 49ers in the NFC, right? Like, am I missing anyone?
Those teams just feel like the most complete. Like, unless it's like a fluke, playoff run for a team.
Yeah, it just seems so in balance this year, where there's so many good AFC teams and there's not great selection.
AFC, you could name like 8 teams that are there.
Yeah.
NFC is like you're picking between 2, which I know that's not how it's going to be once the season starts, but
something will happen, like some random team. Yeah, but yeah, I agree. I think what'd you say? Ravens, Eagles. That's a good.
I feel like it'd be a fun one too. Like Lamar and Jalen Hurts. Like that'd be nice. A fun matchup to watch.
And then who comes out on top?
I think the Eagles.
Must be tough for a Giants fan to admit, but
say the Georgia guys get all their rings.
Hey, there you go.
A little bit okay.
That's where it comes from, the truth. Yeah. Okay. Well, very good. So I'm going to hold you to that, and then, like I said, we'll have you back for some Georgia fandom, or
I could talk for like hours and hours about Georgia.
Yeah, I say you can just come on and we can talk about whatever. But I appreciate you coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you all for listening to today's episode. Special thank you to Mason for coming on and being the very first guest ever on Fandom from Afar. We appreciate him coming on and talking about his New York Giants. Hopefully they'll have a little bit better season than the 8-9 that he predicted, but I'm sure he'll have fun no matter what. If you can, please give us a follow on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Give us those 5-star reviews and keep up with all the newest and best episodes. I really appreciate you listening. We'll see you next time.